A very good evening. Time then for the press preview. It's a first look at what is on the front pages as they come into us here at Sky. And to check out the headlines tonight, Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the political commentator, Adam Bolton. Great to see you both. We shall chat in a moment. We're going to have a look at some of those front pages for you. The Metro leading with the government's U-turn on scaling back winter fuel payments to pensioners. The paper points out that it's not known when the change will come into effect or, indeed, how many people will have the benefit restored. The FT says the decision came about in part because of pressure from Sir Keir Starmer's own Labour MPs. The Prime Minister's U-turn is also the lead story for The Guardian, which says it came after a fierce backlash. That story also on the front of the eye, Reeves open to new wealth taxes if she faces budget black hole. While the Telegraph carries further details from memos reportedly sent by the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Raina, to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, with the latest revelation being that Miss Raina apparently suggested cutting benefits to newly arrived migrants. The Mail describes the disagreements between the two ministers, combined with the winter fuel U-turn and increased inflation, as a triple blow to the government. While the Star has an emotional plea from the mother of British tourist Jay Slater after friends who were called to give evidence at the inquest into his death failed to turn up. And Kevin and Adam are here with me in the studio. Great to see you both. Lots to discuss. Adam, nice to see you back. Why don't you start for us? We're talking about the U-turn, The Guardian putting it very succinctly.
Yeah, I mean, U-turn is in a lot of headlines in tomorrow's papers because it was a U-turn. And the odd thing was really that in announcing it, Keir Starmer didn't pretend that it was anything other than a change of mind. It was actually announced at Prime Minister's Questions with a set-up question from a Labour MP beforehand, and then he announced it. What was amusing was everyone else in the House of Commons noticed what he'd just said, except apparently Kemi Badenoch, who didn't respond. And then in her fourth question, she asked him if he was going to do a U-turn. He just said he was going to do a U-turn. But look, it's very significant because it is the government admitting that it got it wrong. And clearly, they're talking about a fierce backlash in The Guardian. This is because everyone who was out campaigning in the local elections for the Labour Party said the first thing that was raised with them was you didn't say you were going to do this and you did it and it's hurting pensioners.
How damaging is it?
I would have thought it was more damaging to carry on heading in the wrong direction. It was a catastrophic mistake because, Labour MPs talk about local council elections, going to Runcorn and Helsby, Labour lost that by-election by 6. The big issues coming up were winter fuel allowance acts and disability benefit cuts on their way. It wasn't migration. That's what it was. And I think the mistake would have been just to carry on blindly going down this this route of destruction. And the Guardian call it a partial U-turn because we don't yet know when it will come into force. Will the payments go out the coming winter, or will it be the winter after? And how many people will get it back? Now, the Prime Minister talked about more pensioners. He didn't say all pensioners. So
maybe a partial U-turn.
He talked about changing thresholds because at the moment, if you have an income £11,000 or less, that's the only people who qualify, and you have to be claiming benefit. And we know that lots of pensioners on those low incomes don't choose benefit. The problem is that we don't know when this is going to be announced or what is going to happen, because the government is sticking to this line that it's only going to make a tax change in what it calls a fiscal event. That is a budget, which they say they're only going to have once a year. So there's the possibility, I can't really believe that they're going to do this, that this is going to drag on through the party conference season to a budget in late October. Everyone's saying, well, what exactly are you doing? The one giveaway which we got from Keir Starmer was he did talk about thresholds, which suggests that at this stage, they're not just going to do a total U-turn and drop the whole plan, but they may end up there, Kevin, don't you think?
Well, it would be cleaner and easier just to do that, because if you do thresholds, on the 2015 Labour manifesto, and Ed Miliband was the leader, proposed means testing it for higher tax rate payers at the time. But it's a cliff edge benefit. So if you get £1 over, you lose all 300 quid. It's not tapered and taken away gradually. The other problem they have is it's paid by the DWP, which doesn't have access to the HMRC tax records to see exactly how much people are earning to try and sort that out.
Martin Lewis, the financial guru, is saying if you do want to increase the number of people paying, that possibly the easiest thing to do would be to look at council tax bands, and that everyone up to council back to C or D would receive it, and then anyone with a more valuable home.
Although they're quite controversial as well, aren't they? So I mean, even that's not perfect.
So I think it might just be cleaner to think again.
Well, they haven't been reformed in England since, was it 1991? And then you get the problem of the very cash-poor pensioners in a big house.
Yeah, that's right.
But the Guardian do point out there's another whole issue yet to be tackled, and that's the benefit cuts. But the government is thinking of coming up with a £750 million package to tackle child poverty, and they hope that and the winter fuel U-turn will allow them to push ahead with
that's Gordon Brown, who's been campaigning on this, done an interview today.
Yeah, we've spoken to him today,
with Sophie Ridge. Quite interesting, because really not helpful from a former Labour leader and Prime Minister to say you want to get rid of the two-child benefit cap and you must deal with child poverty.
He's described that as the most cost-effective way of taking children out of poverty. His plan is a £9 billion plan, funded in part by a tax on banks, everybody's favourite target, and online gambling. Not £750 million.
He's desperate not to be a backstreet seat driver, isn't he? But of course, it is difficult.
He's bitten his tongue though on child poverty and also cuts to international aid, which are two of his big areas.
Let's bring in the Mail, sort of delving into other areas that we've touched on. Saying here, a humiliating day for the Chancellor. PM U-turns on winter fuel, inflation soars, and Raina takes aim at her tax policies. Kevin, do you want to explain?
Yeah, the Mail always love a person to put everything on, and particularly a female person, and it's now the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, because they put all that together, and I think humiliating day for her. I think that's probably fair to say. It's Keir Starmer who announces the winter fuel allowance change. She introduced it weeks after the general election. It's gone disastrously. Inflation jumping to 3.5% is very painful after awful April, and water, council tax bills, mobile phone bills are all going up. And then, of course, we saw that Daily Telegraph story this morning on Angela Rayner's alternative economic plan to raise £4 billion, taxing wealthier people various ways, which is very popular with Labour MPs, I'm told. The journalist who wrote it was quite surprised how many Labour MPs said, oh, that's a good idea, as an alternative to welfare cuts.
And, of course, the Mail had a big go at Angela Rayner over her housing arrangements, but now she's become really their heroine because they're turning on Rachel Reeves. And, this is interesting, partly because Angela Rayner is unsackable. She's the elected deputy leader of the Labour Party. Partly because there does seem to have been talk about maybe taking away from her the house building policy. And it seems that people sympathetic to her are now saying, well, actually, we had that, it was Sam Coates, wasn't it, who did that story saying possibly they're going to take away housing. Official Labour spokesmen have now been forced to say, no, we're not going to do that. And really what we're getting from Angela Rayner is an alternative economic plan. Yeah,
which leads us very nicely onto the Telegraph again. Let's cut migrant benefits.
Which is, she put these proposals in March before the statement from Raina, and it was tax rises then. Now this is reduce access to universal credit, pensions, make it tougher, which will play to, let's call it just a reform audience. But it shows she's thinking in ways. This I'm more surprised she's proposed than the tax increases. But nevertheless, you can see she's trying to build a kind of almost a blue Labour.
Well, it does tell us something about her because you remember she made the comment about where I come from, we shoot terrorists first and ask questions later. I mean, she's old Labour in that sense, rather than Corbynite left-wing Labour. You know, there is a difference, and I think, you know, she's emerging as a character, as you say, quite close to Blue Labour. Although one point I would make is there's absolutely no sign as yet of any split, or I'm certainly not detecting it, between Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. And it was Keir Starmer today who, if you like, chose to take the pain for making the U-turn in public. He didn't leave it to the Chancellor.
There is tension, isn't there, between number 10 and number 11? You don't think there is?
I think they're pretty close at the moment.
The eye says there on the insiders.
Yeah, so look at the eye next, actually.
Yeah, Rachel does not disagree with Angela on that, but they talk about the number 10 along being unhappy about policy the Treasury has. But that's, you'll get a bit of pushing and shoving in politics all the time in discussions. It's when does it become a split? I don't think there's a split yet. I've not heard or picked it up. But there are tensions, but that's quite normal because ministers always meet, cabinet ministers, and they're making spending bids, get pushed by the Treasury, which normally likes to say no, not yes.
Where do you think Labour are at the moment, following on from the local election results?
Well, I think they will hope that this U-turn is going to staunch the wound, although, as I say, they've got to actually make it explicit quite what they're doing. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of tension in the government because, obviously, you know, Reform are ahead of them in the opinion polls. People are worried, although, again, you know, interesting Sky analysis saying that they should be more worried about losing votes to the Liberal Democrats and the Greens.
Yeah, that's right,
they should be. Yeah. But I think we are at this stage where things aren't going brilliantly. We've got the spending review coming up, which it's got to be seen to be competent. If it just looks like austerity Mark II, I think that will put big pressure on Rachel Reeves. And we are at a time where, you know, if there's going to be big changes in the minister, if there's going to be a reshuffle, it's probably, you know, going to be in July. Yeah. And so people are jockeying for position.
Yeah. Final thought, Kevin?
I think they're in a hole, but on winter fuel they've stopped digging and have got a way to climb out. They've still got issues around benefit cuts, the spending review, if it's squeezing departments, how do you reform justice if you don't spend extra money? And then on top of that, I think that Island of Strangers speech went down very badly.
With the left?
Yeah, I think a bit wider than that. And that's where, you know, the Greens and Libs, and I think it disillusioned a lot of Labour MPs, quite centrist Labour MPs, some on the right, they just felt the tone was wrong.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Well, we will leave it there and move on. Thank you both for the moment. Coming up after this short break, another Oval Office ambush by Donald Trump, this time on the South African president, discussing that and more of the day's news next.
Clubs, 10 matches, one final day. It's Premier League Championship Sunday. Broadcasting and streaming live. The Champions League chase comes to an end. And Liverpool are crowned in front of the Anfield faithful. Premier League Championship Sunday. All starting at 11 a.m. Brought to you by Expedia.
Pushing forward, trying to get people to disperse.
What Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me.
Is that your opinion?
It is. It is.
They were serious, coordinated attacks.
It's an entire generation that will have to contend with the horrifying impacts of this conflict.
The number of patients is increasing.
It's been quite some day.
Hey, what country are you
from? The UK.
Why don't you go back to your country?
You've gone viral.
I've ever had such a reaction.
It's just incredible.
Since the Oval Office meeting, have they reached out to you?
If Ukraine asks for help and its allies decide to help, then that's the end of it.
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
A historic day here today.
Beth Rigby from Sky. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
There could be some more painful decisions to come.
Thank you. Thank you all. We are under
Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live. I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Hello again, welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me in the studio, Kevin Maguire and Adam Bolton. Kevin, front of the Financial Times, another remarkable event in the Oval Office. What did you make of it, this sort of showdown between Cyril Ramaphosa and Donald Trump?
Yeah, Trump decided to bully the president of South Africa the way he did Zelensky from Ukraine. It was extraordinary watching it. Just thinking, is this really happening?
Dim the lights and start the movie.
Is this satire or is this real politics? And of course, he's making these claims about a genocide against white farmers, which have been completely debunked. And Cyril Ramaphosa looked incredibly awkward. Now, it might play to his white MAGA base in the US. The Ku Klux Klan, I've no doubt, will be cheering. But it looked a real terrible way.
But what was absolutely clear this time was that it was a setup. It was a planned ambush. Yeah. I mean, not only has he changed it, so before the cameras used to be let in, then bring the tape out, now he's set it up to go live. And he actually had the opportunity to dim the lights and to project a film of black extremists to show Cyril Ramaphosa.
Some really old clips as well.
Yeah, really old clips.
Years.
And as we see on all these front pages, he had a pile of clippings. Now, he has got a woman called Nancy, who is a sort of MAGA enthusiast, who is the person who feeds him information. And we knew that she was feeding him clips from, quite dubious sources. But she's also, he was saying, "Where's Nancy?" before he showed this film, because he wanted her to roll tape, as it were, to subject Cyril Ramaphosa to this. The claims he was making are not true. I mean, it is not true that there is a white genocide underway. Their farmers are killed, but they're no more than any other. It's also not true that there is, at the moment, the repossession of farms without compensation, although a bill has been passed. But he just asserted those things which are, current in far-right circles. And, we need to remember that although he's against immigrants, he has actually already had more than 50 white South Africans coming to America, and he's welcomed them, farmers, saying they're being persecuted. So this is absolutely him wanting to get a message out that what he thinks of South Africa, black South Africa.
How do you think Ramaphosa did in sort of standing up to that?
Yeah, should he have bitten back and fought back harder? You wanted him to. But I suppose he's caught, he's blindsided.
Well, he was there to do deal.
Yeah.
He was hoping to do billions of dollars in trade deals.
Yeah, well, you had Elon Musk waiting to do a deal on communications and satellite systems, and so I think rather like Zelensky, he was probably having an out-of-body experience, thinking, is this really happening? How do I get through it?
He kept his cool. And responded and just got a little dig in saying, "I'm sorry, I haven't got a plane to give you." And Trump said, "Well, if you have, I'll take it." And because the announcement was today, confirmation that the Americans.
Well, he didn't like that question, did he? As well.
That came from NBC, and he told the reporter he was a terrible man. But
I mean, it's going to make any other leader very wary, isn't it, of going into this?
Around the world, other leaders will look at this in democracies and they will be revolted by it.
I mean, it's basically Trump having a sort of another episode, great television as he sees it, behaving like he did on, The Apprentice, saying, "You're fired." But one of the amusing things, apparently, Ramaphosa was asked to bring famous golfers with him. He bought 2 out of 3 famous South African golfers that he was asked to bring. And after they'd had this altercation about what's going on in South Africa, Trump then turned to the golfers and sort of said, "What do you think about this?" And Ernie Els, I think, didn't turn up. No, Ernie Els was there.
Yeah, he was there, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, Trump said, "Oh, that was a good answer. That was more difficult than a 6-foot putt."
Listen, let's just finish with the football. We should mention the football. Kevin, on the back of the Star, quite a good headline, actually. All white on the night.
Yeah, the picture and the headline going together. Yeah, that's Spurs. Europa final between the 4th and 5th bottom teams in the Premier League.
I mean, it's quite remarkable, that, isn't it? And now £100 million.
Spurs are in the Champions League. All my Spurs friends are really delighted, and all my Manchester United mates are despairing. But it wasn't a great game of football. But if you're Spurs, that does not matter. You won your first trophy since 2008.
We should point out to anyone who doesn't know that Spurs generally play in white, hence the headline.
Yeah. So not following on from Donald Trump. Yes.
Well explained. Thank you very much. Great having you both in the studio. We shall speak again in half an hour.